Hey guys, it's John from Physical Living, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to do the glute bridge exercise and some other variations. Glute bridge is also known as the hip bridge. Some people call it the shoulder bridge, the hip lift, the butt lift. It goes by a lot of different names. They're all the same exercise. Basically you're lying flat on your back with your feet flat on the floor. I guess I can show you while I'm talking to you. And you just press your hips up to full hip extension. And lower them down. So it's a great exercise for your glutes, for your hamstrings, and unfortunately in my experience most people don't do this exercise properly, and I think it's because it is so simple that a lot of people they kind of do it mindlessly. They just go through the motions and think, oh, I can do that, and they aren't mindful when they're performing it, and so they're leaving some results on the table. And so I wanted to create this video to really cover it in depth, talk about the most important things to keep in mind so that you can get the most out of the exercise and hopefully prevent any problems from happening down the road. Because even an exercise like this can hurt and injure you if you don't do it right, and especially when you get to some of the more difficult variations, which I'll show you in a minute. So just going to talk you through it. Basically you're going to lay flat on your back with your knees bent about a 90-degree angle. You're going to want to play around with the foot positioning to figure out what feels best for you. You're looking for a position where you get a mid-foot balance when you're pressing your feet and feel stable, where you don't feel like your feet are going to slip out on you or anything like that. You also want your hip, the width of your foot placements to be about hip to shoulder width apart. So you don't want them super wide, you don't want them close together. You want some space between them. So figure out the proper foot placement for you just by experimenting. And you're going to be laying flat on your back with your tailbone slightly tucked, lower back flat on the floor when you're laying down, and shoulders and back of your head obviously in contact too, all of that relaxed. Hands should be palms down, flat on the floor, a little bit out to your sides. Just find a spot that's comfortable for you where you feel like you have a stable platform. And more important than where your hands are resting is what you do with your shoulders. So during the entire range of motion of the exercise, you want to keep your shoulder blades retracted, so pinched together, pulled back a little bit to create a stable platform to support your upper body weight. The other important thing to keep in mind is what to do with your head, and that is nothing. You basically want to keep it totally relaxed. There should be no strain in your neck or your head, and if there is, then you should not do the exercise until you figure out why and correct that. So if you find your neck straining or is uncomfortable, you got to figure that out. And so to initiate the movement, you're going to find your position, get set up, retract those shoulder blades, and then you're going to press through a mid-foot balance or slightly back towards your heels into your feet, and at the same time contract your glutes and your hamstrings, and that's what you need to be mindful of during this exercise, is that contraction, because that's what we're focusing on here. This is an isolation exercise to get the glutes and the hamstrings targeted. So you want to press through that midfoot or through your heels, and then contract your glutes and your hamstrings until your hips raise up to full hip extension, not over hip extension, but full hip extension. You basically want to have a straight line from your knees to your hips to your shoulders. So basically your torso, your hips, and your thighs should all be in one straight line. And your glutes and your hamstrings should be active. They should be contracted throughout the entire range of motion. That's what we're focusing on. Another thing to keep in mind is you want to keep your knees tracking over your feet. So you don't want to have your knees bowing in. You don't want to have them bowing out. You want them stacked vertically over your ankles and feet. So you're going to get into position, drive through that midfoot balance, squeeze your glutes and hamstrings until you get to full hip extension. You're going to pause for a moment, then lower back down under control, keeping those glutes active. Don't just drop down. You're going to keep those glutes active, slow and control until your tailbone comes down and your lower back is flat on the floor again. And you want to keep that controlled movement throughout the entire set of the exercise. This is not a rapid hip thrust. It's a slow and controlled strength exercise, so keep the tempo slow. From there, once you've mastered the basic exercise, and for most people that'll happen pretty fast if you're not coming off of an injury or something along those lines, Once you've mastered the basic exercise, you can do 20 reps smooth and under control. You can work on to some more difficult variations. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can do a single leg version, so you can have one knee up and press with the other leg. You can have the leg extended overhead or reached out in front of you and do the same thing. So you're just, again, coming up to full hip extension, lowering down until your bum is flat on the floor. You can elevate your feet onto a bench or a step or an exercise ball, which will create a stability challenge. You can put your feet into a suspension trainer, like a set of rings or a TRX, which is also going to really increase the stability challenge. You can squeeze a medicine ball between your knees, which is going to activate your glutes in different parts of your glutes in a different way. And you can also add load. You can hold a weight in your lap to lift that weight. So you're not just lifting your body weight, but you're lifting a barbell or a sandbag or any other weight that you can control here on your lap. So if you have a barbell, you use a soft pad around it so it doesn't dig into your hips. And you're just going to put it in the crease of your hips. So not on bones, not in your belly, but in that crease in your hips. So it's resting on your beefy hip flexor muscles. And so you can, I've seen people load up barbells really heavy for this movement because your glutes are, they're a big beefy muscle. They can get really strong. So you can certainly hold the barbell there or a heavy sandbag. I've seen people anchor a resistance band on either side and wrap that around their hips. And then the band stretches as they go into that hip extension. But the point is that you can make this exercise harder if you want. And so I would encourage you to explore those options. And remember to keep those basics in mind. Head and neck relaxed. Keep your shoulders packed down and retracted back slightly to create a stable platform. You do not want your shoulders relaxed. You don't want them shrugged up towards your ears. You want to keep them in that proper, stable position. And another very important point I didn't point out before, but I should have, is another way of thinking of this movement is it's a hip hinge instead of a spinal flexion extension. So at no point during this exercise should you be extending or flexing your spine. You should keep your spine, with the exception of your neck because your head's resting on the floor. But you should keep your spine in as close to a neutral position as possible. So when you're lowering down, you're not reaching your butt down with a spinal extension. You're lowering your butt down with that hip hinging motion and controlling it with the glutes and the hamstring contraction and maintaining that midfoot balance. And so it's very important. This is a hip hinging movement, not a spinal flexion or extension movement. So that's just another checks and balance that you can use to make sure you're doing the exercise properly. So I think that's all I'm going to say about this, so I think I can get up now. Hope that this was helpful for you. Please give me any feedback or ask me any questions that you have. And thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.